fellas, Cinema back. Another dish. How we doing out there? Good, great, grand, and wonderful. As you see on your screen, your dial, however you are joining us today, Drive, 1997. Not to be confused with the Wyndon Refn Drive with Ryan Gosling. In fact, this one's better. I know, blasphemous. I'm sure I'll probably get some hate email about that one. So what is Drive? Toby Wang is on a martial arts Mission Impossible with a bioenergy module placed in his chest. Toby's awesome martial arts skills are tuned to a superhuman level. Why wouldn't they be? The only problem is Tony doesn't want the power. They kill the king. They tend to be a little bit more lenient to the grunts. Now, only an army can stop him, and that's just what's hunting him down, and a great villain at that. As he makes his escape from an ammo-packing posse of hitmen, Toby needs a hostage, which ends up being Malik, played by Kadeem Hardison. Great on-screen chemistry. It was so fantastic to watch Mark Dacascos and Kadeem Hardison go toe-to-toe with each other. Anyway, Toby needs a hostage, and Malik's got to drive him to freedom in Los Angeles, and two unlikely heroes face off with a new advanced killer in this cult classic. Man, it's not a cult classic. It's just a classic, if you ask me. I've seen enough action films to be able to say that. It's just as good as anything that came before it, and it's just as good as anything that we see now, and I don't just say that because of my guest on. In fact, you audience know I don't blow smoke unless it's warranted. So anyway, the fine folks over at MVD Rewind reached out to me to take a look at this one, and I gladly accepted. In fact, I'm pretty sure I saw this on HBO when I was like 13, 14. I may be manufacturing that idea. Sometimes when I do notes for the show, I'm like, did I see that? And I'm glad that I saw the version that I ended up seeing, because I've watched both versions, the director's cut and the theatrical version. There's no comparison which one's better. It's almost, well, actually we'll get into talking about that. So, the audience knows I hate doing this show unless I have somebody interesting to talk to, and we lucked out on the show today. Joining the show for the first time, director of Drive, conceptual artist, special effects god, and the master, or the Onyx Forge master, I should say, because it's Steve Wang's Onyx Forge. Director, Mr. Steve Wang, thank you so much for joining the show, man.
It's my pleasure, Sean. That was quite an intro.
And I messed up a couple of times because, like I told you, it's weird for me. I tend not to get starstruck, and like I told you before we started rolling, a lot of smoke blowing in this episode. I start going down all your credits, and I swear, I think if not for you, Stan Winston, and Rick, I don't know if I would have gotten into movies the way that I have. And I don't just say that, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the special effects that you've done later in the show, but I mean that. I'm going down the list and I'm just going, love this. One of my favorites of all time. And I'm not going to tell you what that is right now, but
that's very kind of you. I'm just a dude doing stuff,
that's typically the answer I get. Is I had the great Sonny Pang on the show not long ago, and he was just like, "We're just people. You got to remember that. Whether you're getting nervous or not, we're not bred in factories in Bakersfield. We're just normal people."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So speaking of normal people, I was listening to the commentary and watching the bonus features, the making of and everything, which was highly detailed about you. But I kind of wanted my audience, who I would say 50% is down with buying physical media. They still love physical media. And the other 50%, it's one of two things. They need to be sold on the physical media, sold on the people that are making it, and they will stream it first. And by the way, I believe Drive is streaming on Tubi and Vudu right now. It's the theatrical cut, and so that you can't watch that one. It's sacrilege. So, but in getting to know you a little bit, I kind of wanted them to know like how you got into film, more specifically. What was the defining moment where you just went, you know what? I want to do this for a living. I want to tell stories for a living. I want to entertain people for a living.
Well, it was actually very accidental how it all happened. Back in 1984, I was just getting ready to, I was still practicing my artwork and trying to figure out a way to move to LA and get into the movie business. I had a friend who was in film school, and he was always talking about making movies and telling me about all his stories he wants to do, and he wants me to help do the makeups. And so I would help him, but then a lot of times, like, nothing gets made. And after a lot of this talk, I thought, like, well, what's the big deal about making a movie? I decided to make one of my own, a little short film, just out of pure curiosity. And then after 6 months of complete hell, of trying to get your friends together on weekends to shoot and trying to get them to show up, and I realized why people talk about it, but they never do it, because it's really difficult to get people together. But 6 months of it, I made this little 30-minute Kung Fu Rascal movie with all my friends, and when I finished it and watched it for the first time, it was magical. It was a piece of crap movie, but the idea that I am projecting this movie that I made, and it's amazing. It's a little film, it's like a movie. I'm telling a story. So after that, I got bit by the bug really hard. I was like, I need to make more movies. Then I continued to make little short films. I collaborated with some friends, on little short projects here and there, making short films. And ultimately, it led me to wanting to do it full time. And that's when I decided to do a theatrical version, well, not theatrical, but feature version of Kung Fu Rascals. And so this started in like the end of 88 to the beginning of 90. I took that whole time off and I shot Kung Fu Rascals on the weekends to make my first film. And from that point on, I ended up getting an agent and a manager, and then I started getting kind of more work here and there, and that's kind of how it all sort of happened for me.
Just for when you were growing up, for the audience, what were a couple of the films that you saw where you were just like, I want to do this. This is great. There had to have been one or two where like you were so blown away by what you were seeing that you thought, hey, maybe I can make a go at this.
Well, I mean, mostly, back in that time, my teenage years, I was really into martial arts films. So some of my heroes were like Jackie Chan, for sure. I think he was like an innovator of comedy kung fu. Like he took just a standard sort of aggressive combat style and turned it into comedy and turned it into storytelling, visual storytelling, like something that Charlie Chaplin would do, and so that really captured my imagination. And so I watched all his films. John Woo was another one I was a huge fan of, from Better Tomorrow to, all the films that he's made. He's sort of like reinvented the whole gangster gun battle genre. So those two had really, really big impact on me. And then some of Spielberg's films too. I think Spielberg, he's like a master storyteller, and he's invented so many ways to move the camera to like just pull emotions out of you, whereas there wouldn't be any. And then understanding that, the craft of filmmaking, there's just a lot of tricks that you can actually do. That's actually just a craft, And so having all those influences, those are the kind of my early influences. Then, of course, being a big fan of makeup and creatures like Ultraman and Kamen Rider, and all that kind of stuff. So, if you look at my filmography, it's basically all that thrown together in one movie.
Well, and I was looking, so after rewatching, I've watched the director's cut 2 or 3 times at this point, the theatrical cut once, and I'm going through your IMDb, I'm looking at Drive. What? I need more of your films, sir. I'm one of those shitty fans where I'm going to, when you're in a wheelchair knocking on death's door, I'm going to be like, no, you got to make another one. And I'm sitting here going, like, there's no we should be able to get everybody back for Drive. And let's do it again. Or Drive 2. I don't care. There was another title, Road to, I forget.
Road to Ruin.
Yeah, Road to Ruin. Let's make a second installment, Road to Ruin, and let's keep everybody, because everybody's great, with the exception of Brittany Murphy, who I'm watching Brittany Murphy in this film, and I'm going, you want to know who would have made a great Harley Quinn? Brittany,
Mm-hmm.
after watching this particular, or her acting in this film, I was like, there's nothing wrong with Margot Robbie, but I remember on like the third or fourth watch, I'm going, man, she would have been great. She would have been so great.
Yeah, she was such a natural. That part was such a hard one to cast because I wanted somebody who seemed a little bit loony, but I didn't want them to be forced, you know. And man, I read so many really good actresses, but when Brittany walked in, she nailed it. She came in, she did it, and I was like, I believe her. She really is that free spirit, you know. And so yeah, she was amazing, and she was so much fun to work with.
And wasn't she like one of the last that you had cast for that particular role? Like, wasn't she one of the yeah.
Second to the last.
That...
The last was Tracy Walter.
Oh, okay, really?
Yeah,
really? Okay.
Yeah. I didn't even meet him. I met him on set because I had already started shooting and we hadn't cast that part yet. And the casting director, Don Phillips, he called me up and says, "Hey, we haven't cast this part yet. What do you think of Tracy Walter?" And I said, "Done. I love Tracy Walter." And so I met him on stage. Yeah.
So let's just get right into it. So how did the project of Drive come about for you specifically?
Well, I'm sorry. I was actually developing a project for Overseas Film Group at the time called Legend of the North Star. And it was supposed to be kind of a reboot of the Fist of the North Star that they had made already with Gary Daniels, but they wanted to kind of reboot it and reapproach it. So they brought me in to do it. And so Nathan Long, who wrote Geiger 2 with me, we wrote a script for it. And we went as far as to actually location scout in Romania because it was very sort of, the backdrop was very heavily sort of 16th century Eastern European influence, post-apocalyptic, you know. So we went to Romania to scout locations. And by the time we got there and learned that, okay, the time that we wanted to shoot, it would have been, the whole country would have been covered in snow, and which is not very post-apocalyptic. So we had to wait. In the meantime, while we were waiting, the Robbie Little, who was the owner of Overseas Film Group, threw another script at me called Road to Ruin. And I remember telling him, "Oh, I remember the script. I actually have the script. It's given to me by my friend Ken Hall, who's a friend of Scott Phillips, who I have not met yet. And it was just sitting in my living room, and I hadn't had a chance to read it yet. So it was sort of ironic that I ended up getting the same script anyway. So I actually read it. I liked it. I thought the banter was really good. You know, the chemistry of the characters. Although it was written for Sylvester Stallone and Jackie Chan at the time. And it was like a traveling gun battle, you know, road movie. They wanted to make for $3 million. And I told them, well, I can't make this movie for this amount of money. The logistics is too expensive. But I said, if you let me rework it to be more of a kung fu movie, you know, a lot of different martial arts, you know, and then I also pitched them the idea of what if it was an African American and an Asian guy instead. I think, you know, growing up and having a lot of African American friends in high school, you know, and Asian friends, like we have sort of this connection, like we have this chemistry, you know, and so they liked the idea, and then we started looking into different casts, and then we ended up with Kadeem Hardison and Mark Dacascos, and sure enough, you know, before we even made the film, I would hang out with them. We have hangouts and just to kind of get to know each other, and then the chemistry was definitely there. That's why when you watch the film, like you feel like these guys really like each other because they really do. And you know, we're all still good friends to this day. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, you guys were busting up on that commentary. I'm sitting here. I'm one of those. I'm kind of like a. Well, I think I'm a fossil because I listen to commentaries. I don't even know anybody around me that listens to commentaries, but like
I do too.
I like Frank Darabont does some really good ones in terms of being extremely detailed. And the first like 15-20 minutes is you guys just having a riot. And and I think was it Koichi was in there with you, Kadeem, Mark, and I was just like, these guys must have had so much fun making this film. If this is the rapport, because I assume that you guys just did this commentary not too long ago. This wasn't something that was done.
This was like 1998, I think.
That's when the commentary was?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't, because it doesn't, well, you know, it shows how I'm a sheep. On the back, it doesn't say commentary from 1998. I thought, oh, they're revisiting it 10, 15 years later, and these guys haven't missed a step. But either way, it doesn't matter if it was 15 years later or in 98. You could tell the love just amongst you four, let alone, the rest of the crew. JP, I thought, was a great villain, and, you don't have JP or Brittany in there. And I was just like, man, I hate this term so much, but I feel when you should use it, you should. This film feels like a labor of love. Like, it doesn't. Yeah. Everyone, I thought, got it. Because you watch films and the chemistry isn't great. Like you just be like, they're fighting. You can tell that at times some actors are trying to upstage other actors, or you can tell that they don't want to be on set with each other. We were talking Steven Spielberg. I mean, some of the best on-set chemistry of all time, I think, is in Jaws. And everybody hated Robert Shaw, So
yeah.
To be fair, he was drunk on set a lot. But I'm watching I'm listening to the commentary, and I'm just like, one, you guys must have had a blast doing this, and two, because of this rapport, like I said, I'm a shitty fan. I want to see it again. I want to see more Mark and Kadeem. Like, I think what's so crucial in an action film, and I'm not going to say that we've kind of thrown it by the wayside these days, but we value aesthetic a little bit more so than story these days, in a lot of ways, and you don't have that in Drive, especially the director's cut. Everybody has their arc, and especially when you compare it to the theatrical cut. In fact, just a random question for you: how many bodies did you and Joe Pesci bury in Las Vegas when you saw the theatrical cut come out?
Wait, you froze there, and I missed that.
Oh no, I froze.
Yeah.
All right, let's try this again, because okay. I thought that this was a relatively funny line, and at first I was like, oh, he didn't find that funny at all.
I'm waiting for the cure of the cancer. The cure of the cancer is, and then you froze.
So when the theatrical version came out, how many bodies did you and Joe Pesci bury in the desert of Las Vegas after you saw that?
Not enough. I don't know.
I mean, well, and if you don't mind, let's kind of talk about that a little bit. I don't like to give too many spoilers away on the show ever, really, but it's kind of the experience, because like I told you, a lot of wannabe filmmakers listen to this show. Can you kind of walk us through, your experience watching the theatrical cut, knowing what you did? Because I know, for me, I know, and some of the wannabe filmmakers know, that once it gets in the producer's hands, like, it's kind of anything goes, and for someone like you, I found it, I was confused by it. You were already working on a small budget. They had already trusted you with the script. And yet we still turned it into a completely different movie. I mean, even the audio cues are different and changes the tone of the entire film. And I'm just like, I don't know how. Look, if a movie's 9 hours long and it's good, I don't care that it's 9 hours long. As long as it's good, that's all that matters to me,
Yeah, it's my feeling too.
And with, I think the theatrical cut's about, what, 140, 141? The director's cut.
They cut about 16 minutes out. And it's all story and character stuff, which to me already, there wasn't a whole lot. It was just, there could have been more story, more character, in my opinion. But there wasn't enough time to develop it further, because it was more like, here's the script. If you want it, do it. We got to do it now. So we scrambled really quick, did some quick rewrites. And a lot of it was ad-libbed, on set. I mean, this whole movie, there was a ton of ad-lib, because it wasn't supposed to be a comedy. And the Overseas Film Group executive, the guy who was in charge, told me and told his entire staff in a meeting that he had no confidence in my ability to direct comedy. So that I should just keep it a straight action movie. To which, when I left with the producer, we're in the bathroom, and he's just like, wow, that's really harsh what he said. And the producer asked me, what are you going to do? And I said, fuck him, I'm going to make a comedy. And that's exactly what I did. From day one, I sat there with Kadeem and Mark. I said, Mark, Kadeem, we're making a comedy. So let's just start ad-libbing the shit out of this movie. And we did. Every day we ad-libbed. And when dailies came back, the official word from the executives was that they loved all the footage. And that was the best thing they've ever gotten out of the history of the films that made it through that company. And every single day, they would line up to watch dailies because they loved to see what was new, what was coming. And then when I finally wrapped the film and did my first assembly cut, I had the misfortune of walking back to the office with this guy, and he started to explain to me why the comedy worked in this movie. I was like, yay, Hollywood. This movie was a really tough time in my life because I went from having like being the golden boy, having complete trust. They just like do whatever you want, however you want to do it, kind of thing, to finally when I put the film, I finished the film. The theatrical cut the director's cut you saw was finished completely the way you saw it before that theatrical cut was even conceived. And then they took it to MeFed in Italy, another film market. And apparently I got a call from them that, it did horribly. Nobody wanted to buy it, which I found out 2 years later was actually a lie. It actually was so huge over there. And Miramax actually offered to buy it theatrically and all the stuff. And the guy got greedy and he decided that, maybe he can't get the money he wants because even though the buzz was huge, because we didn't have any big stars in it, and Miramax explained to him that we have to spend a lot of money to advertise this film. And we're willing to do that because we know this is going to be a hit, but we have to get people's butts in the theater by, every means necessary, which means we can't pay you up front, but you're going to, this movie's going to be a hit and we believe in it. And the guy's like, no, I want my money up front. And so he had to concoct a story to tell me that nobody wanted to buy it. So that when he decided that he was going to recut it, redo the music, all the little things that he wanted to do with it that I didn't agree with, that I didn't want to do, now is this chance to have an excuse to do it, and he can play filmmaker. And just let me be clear, this is not the producer. The producer, Mike Leahy, was 100% supportive. And he's an amazing producer, and he watched my back, and he was, he always had the best interests of the film in mind. This was the executive who owned the studio, and who he just wanted to play filmmaker. And it was really unfortunate. Then it was like another year of hell watching them butcher this film and doing whatever they want. And it was awful experience. And at the end of the day, when both versions went out, my original cut made way more money. I scored way high. I have documents proving that my version scored much higher than most summer action films coming out from major studios. And it was just a missed opportunity. It was sad.
Yeah, and it should have. Didn't you walk away with the audience prize in Canada?
Yeah, it was Fantasia 1998. I won first place in the international category. There was the domestic category, international. And it went up against Jackie Chan's films and John Woo's and all these other movies that was coming out. And for some reason, the audience voted my film to be the best one.
No, not for some reason. This movie's fucking great, dude. And it came out before Rush Hour. This is a year and some change before Rush Hour. And I always have my suspicion because they're still doing it in Hollywood where you'll see a biopic about a musician or whatever from Universal, and then before you know it, there's another biopic that's coming out 3 months after it. Hollywood is known for doing that. And I'm sitting there watching this guy, and I'm going, they ripped him off. You can't rip off Jackie. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. Jackie is I think a once in a lifetime talent. I'm with you. He's one. I actually like Jackie more than I like Bruce, and I catch a lot of shit for that. But for me, it's about the martial arts and the film, and because Jackie has blended that better than I think anyone still, in terms of comedy. I still don't see how you could do this to a film or how listening to your story 1 year later Rush Hour blows up and like there's got to be so many people that were a part of this, or the decision making. I mean, maybe not so much, the decision making from theatrical cut to director's cut, but not putting more advertisement behind this, because I actually kind of really do feel maybe we wouldn't be talking about Rush Hour in the same light that we would Drive. Maybe we would be talking about Drive 3, not Rush Hour 3, which was abysmal, Like, it's just...
Yeah, it's funny because here's a little trivia. I actually, after I finished Drive, I went to Universal Studios to meet with an executive there, and they had an early version of Rush Hour before we went to New Line. So I read the script, and I went to meet with the executive, and they said, "Oh, do you think this is a film you'd be interested in directing?" And I said, "Sure." But I said, to be honest with you, I felt like I just directed this movie, which was Drive, and he saw it, He goes, "Yeah, we have to, like, make some changes and whatever." So I didn't get the job, but then the film ended up going from Universal to New Line, and then became the Rush Hour that it became. But, Kadeem Hardison told me that, he's friends with Brett Ratner, who directed Rush Hour. And he told me that when Brett saw Drive, he was like, "Holy shit, I'm glad your movie didn't come out, because if you did, we never would have been able to do Rush Hour, because it's basically the same idea,
It's the exact same idea, and it's not near as good. I think Jackie stands out because, aforementioned, he is Jackie. But
Sure.
I think in terms of chemistry and film as a whole, and I'm not just saying this because you're present, there's no question which one's better to me. Like, and I mean that, man. I mean, even some of, and I know that you had a hand in this too, but the action sequence are all motivated by something. It's not just like, hey, let's turn on the camera and watch these guys kick and punch, Like, I found and the action sequences in this are my type of action sequences. I am much more of a fan of the hand-to-hand combat and being creative. In fact, the creativity in some of the fight sequences that you have in this are second to none. I mean, like I said, just as good as anything that came before, and probably better than a lot of stuff that's come after. And that's a testament to you and
Koichi.
Koichi.
100%, yeah.
And
those guys are great. They're so inventive and creative, and what I love about working with Koichi is that a lot of times I'll come up with the concepts for the fights. I'll say, here's the setting, here's with the weapons, here's the whatever, and here's the objective. And then they go and they choreograph, and they'll come in and I'll go, yeah, I like this, I like that, but let's change this and change that, and sometimes it's funny too, because even though I love action, I have a lot of action watching background, and I'm kind of a filmmaker. Like, I problem solve little things, like in the scene in the hotel room where Mark Dacascos, he cuts the shoelaces off one of the guys and takes the shoe, right? Koichi was trying to choreograph that, and he's just like, "Well, how do you do that? This is kind of not possible." And I'm like, "I do special effects, man. I'll tell you about what's possible." And I literally, showed him. I just said, "You take some, give me some shoelaces," and I cut up the little bits. And I said, "I'll lay it on here. You can't see, it's black." I said, "Now give me a fake knife." "Okay, watch." And I said, "Hold the camera." And I just went boom, boom, and then you see the laces fly off. And I said, "Now the next shot, he just jump over, will untie his shoes already, and he just pulls it off like that." So I choreographed that little part. And Koichi, and they're all laughing at me, like, "What? That's stupid. I can't believe that's," and then we shot it. They're like, "Oh, okay, well, I buy that."
It works. It totally works.
Special effects.
Well, speaking of special effects, I want to tell you, I'm not easily duped, sir. I am not easily duped. You duped me so many times on miniatures with this film. I was kind of annoyed, to be honest with you. I'm like, I go back and I'm watching, the making of, and I'm going, "Oh shit, that was a miniature too." Oh, even the...
Don't watch Christopher Nolan movies then.
Yeah. Like, the only one that I was like, all right, there's no way they got a real rocket. That's the only thing I am sure of. But, you had... between your second assistant director and I forget his name, the guy that specializes in pyrotechnics for miniatures. He worked on Star Wars and a couple of other things. Just absolutely destroyed it, because you're taking a $3 million film, and some of those miniature shots, some of those CG shots, like Hong Kong, or was it Hong Kong where Leung's where his headquarters are? That's CG, right? That's a miniature with you made a $3 million film look like a $30 million film, and
thank you.
And you're talking about something from 97, you know? Like, it still plays well now, 24, 23, 24 years later, and I was blown away by that. Like, and I want to tell you something that was really perplexing as I was thinking about it. This movie looks light years ahead of its time and somehow exactly where it should have been. Like, it looks like from 97, but everything that you're seeing I think would work now. I really do. Like, I'm bummed that, like, you know, we may never see these two, you know, Mark and Kadeem join forces again because, like I had said in the beginning of the show, I've seen enough action films now. I don't care to see another car chase scene. Hand-to-hand combat, I got to have that. But, like, explosions, like, I'm kind of at the point now where it's like, whatever. I care about two things. How well is it choreographed? And how well are these people working off of each other? Well, and another thing, just, is everything motivated? Or are we just, you know, like horror films these days, like sometimes I think that we just try to gross people out for the sake of gross people out. It has no bearing on the plot or anything like that. And the same goes for action films. And I'm watching this 24 years later going, this is better than 90% of the action films that we get. And I still watch a lot of action films out of Hong Kong and Japan and Indonesia, Malaysia, you name it. And I still think we're like missing that thing, you know. It's like, hey, look at how awesome Iko Uwais' stunt team is in The Raid, and it's like, well, you know what? There will be no bad mouthing of The Raid on this show. That I'm a diehard fan for that. But like some other stuff,
that film was amazing. The action in that movie was mind blowing. Yeah. You know, and I know what you're talking about because I'm a really hardcore, hard fan to please when it comes to like hand to hand combat type stuff. Because there's been a saturation of it, and you know, and my personal taste also too has a lot to do with it. Because I don't like it when things are sloppy. You know, I get when you're trying to do a realistic portrayal of a fight scene. Sure, things will get sloppy. That's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you're trying to do something that's a little bit more, I guess, maybe a little bit of pushing the bounds of fantasy, but still trying to make it look realistic. Well, there's a lot of techniques involved. I feel like there's a lot of people doing that, and it becomes like filler. You know, when you see guys punching and kicking each other to the degree where it's filler, and I hate that. Yeah. I feel like every punch, every kick should have a meaning, even if it's something to fake somebody out or something. Like get to the point, and you know, or show something extraordinary that is just not blah 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 blah. You know, like that. I see a lot of that these days, and I get bored. I mean, I don't watch much martial arts films anymore unless something comes out, you know, and somebody says, "Oh, you should watch this one." I think the last one that I saw that really captured my imagination was a Donnie Yen movie, and it was I think Kung Fu Killer. I think it was.
Yeah, Kung Fu.
That was like a love letter to martial arts, you know, and that one was. I love that one. I thought like, wow, there's some great choreography in here. There's some good performances. You know, there's so much magic to that you don't see very often these days in fight movies.
No, and especially not in American films because we care so much about the safety of our stuntmen. Not that there's anything wrong with that. There's not. It's just in the East they push it so much further with the tagging. You know, putting the powder on, and I don't need to explain that to you, but the audience tagging is when you put the powder on, and the actors and actresses are taking that hit. You know, like and in fact, I think the advanced model. In your film, broke his rib. Was it Masaya
Kato, yeah.
Kato, yeah, he broke his rib with a punch from Mark, right?
Yeah, I didn't know about this till after because I shot that interview with him, like you know, months and months later, and then that's when he says I didn't tell the director because I was behind that camera.
Did you do one of these from the camera? You kind of went, what?
Oh, I felt horrible. I felt horrible because you know Masaya, he's like. Back then he was like a huge Japanese heartthrob. You know, I remember going probably maybe like 5-6 years prior to that. I would go to Japan regularly, like 3 times a year, and his face would be all over the billboards, all over the country, like you know, advertising for drinks and for all this stuff. And he was like a heartthrob. Everybody loved him. So I'm just like, oh my god, he broke his rib on my movie. I feel horrible.
He also is great too. Obviously, there's not a significant amount of dialogue in there, but I think in terms of stepping up and doing what you needed to do, he's not out of place. And like you and I were just talking, is like you can only see so many punch and kicks, before you're kind of like, all right, but I don't care about these people, And I thought that was a great villain to implement because he's the one that wants to stay. Mark wants to go, and he wants to stay. And I love. And their fight sequence was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Messiah he's a really really incredible actor. He just on my film, because his English was so limited, we didn't want to like bog him down with all this dialogue and all this stuff. So we decided to just keep him more the silent type, but because he had the chops, like he can look intimidating. He has a lot of screen presence. You can tell right away. So if you watch his later films where he's actually speaking his native language, I mean, he's amazing actor. So yeah.
You mentioned Japan. I feel like I should make a recommendation to you. I know people that are movie people hate recommendations because you're just like, A, I got to work, and B, I know what I like to watch, and I got a ton of shit that I already need to watch. But we're talking Japan. I just saw a Japanese film called Hydra. Have you heard of this? So Hydra, anyway, it's an hour and 18 minutes, and it's been a couple years since I've seen as good of fight sequences, and they're very brief. Everything is motivated by the plot, and with an hour and 17-minute runtime, I can tell you, well, one, there shouldn't be any wasted time with a runtime of an hour and 17 minutes, but there isn't. It is story, fight, story, fight, and the story's great. So that would be my if the last one you saw was Kung Fu Killer, which is like 2016 at this point, 2017, I don't know, a few years back. Check out Hydra. And I wouldn't feel bad if you thought it was a waste of your time because it was less than an hour and 20 minutes. Come on, you're fine.
No, I'll check it out. I mean, yeah, that's as far as fight movies. But right now, one of my favorite series is Rurouni Kenshin. Have you watched that?
No, I have not.
Oh my God, you have to! It's a Japanese series of live action film based on a comic book and anime, and it's about an assassin like back in the 1800s. I think it was 18 to early 1900s. This young kid became like a assassin for the government and all this stuff, samurai, and he was so good at killing that at one point decided he didn't want to kill anymore. And so he took his sword and had a special one forged where the cutting side is on the opposite side. So when he fights, he's never cutting anyone.
I love it.
But he's made so many enemies over the years. And there was 3 films from the series that were all incredible. And then recently they just came out with the new one that's on Netflix right now. It's called The Final, Rurouni Kenshin, The Final. And then in the next few weeks, the origin story is coming out, and the action scenes in these movies are incredible. The guy who did it reinvented Japanese sword action. It's so like fluid and so dynamic and crazy and fast and full of techniques and emotion. And you have to watch this entire series. It's amazing.
I will. I'm about to wrap up the Korean series Kingdom. I'm almost done with that one, and I'll for sure check that one out because TV's hard to convince me. I think it's just movies. It's 2 hours, boom, done. I know that now the culture leans more towards TV than they do movies now, but TV. If it wasn't you, I'd be like, nah, I don't. Whatever. I'm sure it's good. Whatever you're going to say, I'm sure it's good. I don't have time. it's typically my response. Steve, I'm actually I'm kind of feeling uncomfortable. Would you mind giving me like 10 seconds or so? I don't know why. I just feel kind of uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. This is a mug given to me by a friend. It is 100% untrue.
All right,
I am a vegan.
This feels a lot better, and this feels so. I just wanted to point out we got Sean here, and way down at the bottom we have my favorite monster ever created on film, which is Gillman.
Oh, wow.
So, and this is, I had to do, you know what? This still doesn't feel right. There we go. Little Stephen King rules action. We'll get that on camera. Monster Squad's my favorite monster movie of all time. I had to tell you that. I know that this podcast is about Drive. Monster Squad is my favorite monster movie of all time. My favorite Universal monster, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Mine too.
The best creature, if we're talking Creature from the Black Lagoon, that we've ever seen is Gillman, sir. It is.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
There's no comparison, if you ask me. Now, was it kind of a bummer we didn't get to see Gillman swim? Sure. We had 5 other monsters that we had to give their screen time, so I don't get too bent out of shape about that. Every single monster is awesome on that film, man. Like this is why I kind of wanted to save it till the end. Between Predator and Harry and the Hendersons. Yeah, I said Harry and the Hendersons, audience. Half of you guys don't even know what the hell I'm talking about because you're 20. But Harry and the... Dude, I'm not kidding you. Between the 3 of you, Rick, and Stan, like, you may be responsible for actually all this shit that you're seeing right now. Because it changed. Like, Monster Squad was... Jaws and Monster Squad were the 2 films where I went, man, it would be really fun to do that every day on on set. So I apologize. I had to get a little weird and step off for a second. But like I said, I've never had the opportunity to be able to do this. I'm sitting there like, all right, you can, because typically I sport the tie, dress for success. But when you have someone who created your favorite monster of all time, you got to show love. You got
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and that was working for Stan, and and also my good friend Matt Rose, who passed away a few years ago. Yeah, we did all that. We did that together, and those were good times. I think I was 20 years old when I did the Monster Squad, and it was right before Predator. So yeah, that was a very good time in my life where everything was new, and I was like new kid in town and just trying to make something cool, and then giving the opportunity, which was the gold. You rarely get these kind of opportunities anymore. So, and I really appreciate Stan for doing that, giving me the chance.
Oh, I mean, Predator was great, and I don't know if you hear this one. I'm sure people come up to you and they're like, "I love this, I love that." I'm gonna go on record and say that you don't get this one a lot. Alien versus Predator Requiem may be better than most of those movies, like in terms of what it means to be a horror film. And I think again, that's a testament to your work. Sure, the acting was fine, but I'm not there to see humans. I'm there to see an alien and Predator.
I have to agree. I find myself defending that film every once in a while too, because I think as an action-packed monster fest, it delivers. It was violent, but in a creative way. And it's cool to see, the Predator like going around and actually killing people the way a serial killer would do it. I mean, it's crazy, right? But something different, something refreshing, something you didn't get on the other films. And I thought all the creature effects looked really good from ADI. That was the company that I worked for when I was helping them on that, and it was a very entertaining movie.
Yeah, it really was. In fact, I was so annoyed by the first installment, mainly, again, look, I know I'm not here to bash films. I don't bash films. I know just how hard it is to get a film made, everything. I mean, just getting the camera or the lights is a miracle, let alone the actors, the actresses, and everything else. I'm not going to bash the first one, but I think there is one rule, and I'm sure that this is, a redundant statement. There's one rule when it comes to an Aliens and Predator movie. It can never, under any circumstances, be rated PG-13, ever. Mm-hmm. Literally, ever. Like, it's got to be... It's Predator. It's Alien. What are we talking about here?
I'm pretty sure that didn't come from the filmmaker. I remember before that film was made, I was working for Patrick Tatopoulos, and he was doing some concept art for Paul Anderson, who directed the first one. And Paul came in, and I was introduced to Paul, the guy who built the first Predator. And so Paul asked me, he says, "Hey, I'm making this Alien versus Predator movie. He's like, if you were to make this movie," he asked me, "if you were to make this movie, what would you do?" And I made a suggestion to him. I don't know if this was a good suggestion or a bad suggestion. I guess depending on who you ask. But I did say to him, I said, read the Dark Horse comic of the Alien versus Predator with Machiko and that whole relationship between Predator and her, and how they, sort of inducted her into the Predator, status and all this stuff. And I said, there's some, and what I was trying to get across to him was the connection. Because, up to that point, all the Predator movies, there was no connection between the Predator and the humans. And if you want to do something different where there's a third enemy, then somebody has to join forces somewhere, I think, So I encourage him to read that and see what he thinks. And then next thing I know, that he made his movie, and it's kind of basically loosely based on the Dark Horse comic in terms of the relationship between the girl and the Predator. And then also the trivia, the woman that played the lead was also in Drive.
Yes, she certainly was. She was she was Carolyn, wasn't she?
Yeah, Carolyn. Yeah, Kadim's wife.
Yeah, in circling back to Drive, and we'll kind of shut it down here. I appreciate you staying long for me. Another relationship that I thought was great. What an introduction to Malik's character and what he's going through. Then the opening of the garage as they're trying to get the handcuffs off. That's great. And you kind of eliminate a lot of what could be filler in terms of their relationship, because we have it out right there in the garage, and we should. He's cutting off the handcuffs with this guy that she's never seen before. We should. Dude, Drive is so good, man. So I wish it's nice that Hollywood has given us some great stuff, but I also think that they have buried and forgot about stuff that's equally as important. I don't think that there's one. If you're an action film fan, thing number one, I don't think that there's any way that you could walk away from this film and not feel satisfied. But if you're just like a buddy cop, you could take or leave the action. The chemistry between Mark and Kadim work from start to finish. It's uncomfortable at first, and rightfully so. Malik's like, what? Where are you? What is happening? Where are you taking? If you're the good guy, this is bullshit. And there's so many great lines, and their delivery. Not only are there great lines, but the delivery from the actors is great. I mean, there's a couple one-liners from JP that are work. The line from Kadim where he's like, Americans think that all you Chinese people have little feet and you run around kicking the shit out of each other. That line's great. Mark's rebuttal's even great. Yeah, we think the same thing about you, just not as
graceful.
Yeah, not as graceful. And they cut that line, I think, in the theatrical. Did they not? I think that most of that sequence was taken out.
I think I only saw it once.
Okay.
That was
Fair enough. Once was enough, and then that's when the bodies started to pile up in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think that was like 20-some years ago. I saw it. Yeah, so yeah.
Don't go back and watch it. That's as simple as that. It's not. I'm glad that they put it on the disc. I hope some people will take the time to compare and contrast, especially. You want to be filmmakers listening to this right now, I urge you, should you go out and watch this, or if you have to stream it because you don't want to spend $30, stream it, buy it, and then just compare the two. You want to, if you're making you want to make a buddy cop film, something like this, or just an action film, I think Steve gives you all the tools and drive to do it. And not only that, but I think it, again, from a filmmaker standpoint, you better be willing to try harder, because I see these action sequences on Drive, and I can't, with the exception of like a John Wick or something like that, I don't see what we do in American film now that even compares. And sir, for someone like me, like that's why I said I'm a shitty fan. Like, I want to keep seeing more of your work, and I know you lean more towards the special effects and conceptual art, but I think you're a hell of a director, man. I think, especially since I know that you and Scott basically were hand in hand working on the script. Scott gets the credit, but I was kind of annoyed at that too. I was like, I heard you specifically talking about kind of like well, I'll do the film, but we're going to do it this way, and this way. And I kind of thought, well, he deserves a writing credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, all my films, even though I don't take credit for them, I do have a major hand in all the scripts. And it was just more of a tradition where directors like don't take credit for it, I guess. Maybe some of them do, but even on my TV series, the Kamen Rider TV series, I do a lot of writing on that too. Even though the credit always goes to the writers, I just get like a story credit, So if you see a story by credit, you'll know that I get, and Drive, all the action. I wrote all the action in it, and then the last two drafts, God and I worked together on, because it was his baby too, and he did bring a lot to the table. So I don't want to take that away from him either. This is also Scott's baby, so we collaborated really well. Scott was one of my staff writers on my TV show after that too. So. Yeah.
You're very.
But one little bit of advice for young filmmakers that want to get into films is that you'll get lied to a lot by producers when it comes to like artistically, right? Like here's the thing that happens typically that you get brainwashed into thinking faster is better, make the film quick, make the film short, whatever. But the reality of it is that every time we've tested Drive, my version versus a shorter version. My version always tested higher. And the one question that was consistently positive for my version was, did they feel the movie was too long? My version was never too long. The short version was always too long. And the reason that is, even though the short version was much shorter, was because when you don't have story development, when you don't have character, you don't have any kind of anything you can resonate with the characters and or you see at least that there's some bonding between them. If you're not engaged by them as characters, everything is going to bore you from that point on. You have no reason to follow them. So stick to your convictions. When you tell a story, make your characters resonate. Be truthful about your character, what you want to do with it, and develop it. Because when you do and you engage your audience in there, like you look at like Star Wars movies, like you love the Star Wars characters. Like I would follow them anywhere in the universe. I don't care if they go, wherever they would go. I would follow them because you're in love with the characters. And that's the most important thing. If you can make the audience fall in love with your characters, they don't care if it's a 10-hour movie. They will love it because they're there. It's family. So don't let people lie to you and tell you that, follow this time guideline, whatever. You can watch a 3-hour film. It'll feel like an hour and a half because you're lost in it. You're completely lost in it.
Yeah, or you can take a character that has a ton of heart and turn him into a mercenary and see how well that works out for you.
Exactly.
Oh, so annoyed by that.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, thank you so much for staying a little long. I appreciate it. I would love to have you back on again. I could pick.
I'd love to do that.
Awesome. I could pick your ear for hours. I really could. I wish, in fact, we talk about stuff going long. Well, A, if you weren't at work, but B, like if it was a weekend or something, I would go 3-4 hours. Like as long as the conversation's organic and it's entertaining,
Yeah.
I would do it. But you are welcome on anytime, man. Anything that we should be looking out from you?
Let me see. Yeah. We've been working on a lot of stuff. We have a film that we worked on coming out on Netflix. I'm not quite sure when, but it's probably sometime this year, end of the year maybe. It's a Ryan Reynolds film. Currently, it's called The Atom Project. I don't know what it's going to be called, if they change it or not. But right now, as I know, it's The Atom Project. Science fiction, kind of like light fantasy, action comedy. And we made a bunch of like silver, futuristic armor suits for that film. So that's coming out.
The robot in Bill and Ted made me uncomfortable. I don't know why. It just made me uncomfortable.
Good or bad uncomfortable?
Good uncomfortable. But I just kept on. In fact, uncomfortable in the sense I'm like, this is a little too real to me. This like I feel like this shit is right around the corner. That type of uncomfortable, like it was so believable, I was uncomfortable. So a good one.
Oh well, thank you. Yeah, that was so much fun. Anthony Carrigan, he killed it. When he was brought on. That part wasn't entirely fleshed out. So the director, when he cast Anthony, he wanted to bring an actor who could come in and bring it, be that character, bring his form of comedy. And what a great choice Anthony Carrigan was, because he was, to me, like, he stole the show for me. I just, not because I worked on his costume, but just because he was so fun to watch, and all the little nuances, all the little things he did to try to fit in, just, yeah, it was amazing.
And
So
that was the
fun.
guy. He's in the show Barry, I think.
Yeah,
Right?
Barry. Yeah,
Oh
I
my
think he's
God.
NoHo Hank. Yeah,
Yeah, he is the best part of Barry. He is
yeah,
so good as NoHo Hank. But
yeah,
again,
yeah.
I'll just keep you. Like I told you, I can't help myself. I can't get out of my own way. I'll just keep on finding something that you say, and I'll be like, oh, fuck, that's great too. So I apologize. Thank you again for staying long. Let's do this again. I would love so many things I would love to talk to you about, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
All right, man. You be easy. You take it easy, and we'll talk soon. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Take care.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Make sure you guys get this MVD. Like once you start looking at the bonus features of this. Hold on a second here. Like, come on now, Sean. You this is low budget. What the fuck? All right. So you start looking at these bonus features. Hours of stuff on here. Hours. You got the commentary as Steve and I were talking about, which is great, informative, and funny as fuck. You got a 48-minute making of, and it's actually a vintage one. It was done on set at the time, which I thought was not only funny, but like, man, if you don't gain a respect after watching the bonus features for stuntmen in general, I have been banging this fucking stunt men and women are the most, some of the most. In fact, to a certain extent, I think what Steve does, conceptual art, like his Gillman changed the way that I watched movies, and it's like we don't talk about these makeup artists, we don't talk about these conceptual artists, these special effects guys like we should. We always, not that there's anything wrong with Stan Winston or Rick Baker. Look, there's some of the greatest all time, but there's people out there like Steve. Like I didn't want to waste his time by just telling him all the credits that he's done, that he already knows about. Dude, Hell Comes to Frogtown's hilarious and works. Deep Star 6, Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Oh fuck, I forgot to tell him how much I loved Reign of Fire. God damn it, Reign of Fire is still the best dragon movie. It's still the best dragon movie. Underworld he's done. Darkness Falls, Guy. Okay. Enough of the special effect. Anyway, I had to say my piece. Stunt people, stunt men and women, and special effects guys. They're you don't understand how shitty your movie is going to be if you don't have someone that's relatively talented. Seek a Sharknado or something like that, some bullshit like that. No, I won't watch it, so don't fucking ask me. I won't do it. There's good bad movies and there's bad movies. All right. You got deleted scenes to the tune of 10 minutes. Actually, 2 of those deleted scenes I thought should still be in the film. You got another making of that features second unit director Wyatt Weed, stunt coordinator. Jeez, I'm still getting the nerves out a little bit. Stunt coordinator Koichi Sakamoto. And like I said, you also have they put the theatrical cut on here for you, and you saw just how well Steve was feeling that, and I don't fucking blame him, man. That it's not a completely different movie, but the feel and the tone of it. So the best part, you know what? Good example is The Raid. We brought up The Raid on this episode. If you watch The Raid with the original Indonesian audio, watch it all the way through, kind of take mental notes of audio cues, and then watch the English version. One is dark as fuck, and the other is like kind of funny fucking popcorn top 40 shit. Completely, I'm not a completely different movie. The images that you're still seeing are the same, but even like you I think you don't recognize just how crucial that vision becomes. I really don't, and I don't even know why we fuck with people's shit anymore. I really don't. Like whatever the goddamn vision is should be. Period. Oh, it was a little long. Well, you know what? You suck as an audience member. How long? When you say too long, give me a minute. Well, I was like 25 minutes too long. 25 minutes? You can't stomach 25 more minutes of a movie that you thought was really... What the fuck's wrong with you? Anyway, see Drive. This MVD release was awesome. And you're not going to see... I said it 5 times while Steve was on. It's just... all right, am I getting annoying? All right, one last time. It's just as good as what came before it. This movie came out in 97. You got almost 40 years of action. No, that's not true. 30 good years of action films, kung fu films at that point, and you got close to another 30 years past 97. Drive still works on every level, and on some level I almost hurt for Steve because I feel like he was kind of ripped off in a sense, and I don't blame him for having a bad taste in his mouth. I really don't, because how Rush Hour got huge. Look, Jackie Chan's an icon. How Rush Hour got huge, but we aren't talking about Drive, even though if you compare the two, Drive's a much better movie, and it's not the same thing. There's some big story differences, but I think, and I wish I would have said this when Steve was on the show, he went for broke with the story. Like, the story is big, whereas Rush Hour is not near as big. It's not... I mean, I guess you could make the argument that Rush Hour is global, but there's no argument need to be made about Drive. Drive is global in terms of some of the repercussions that, be it a character or some final sequences. I don't spoil anything on the show, but I just think Drive's a better movie. I would stack up Drive against... I would easily put it in my top 20 favorite action films of all time, maybe even 10. And the only reason I'm saying 10 or 20 is, one, I hate lists. As you know, I don't like making lists. I like having like a same plane that everybody, like if I say The Raid and Ip Man are some of my favorite action films. Well, the favorite action films bar, you can put them all on top of there, and Drive should be on top of there. So make sure you check out the MVD release of Drive. As we mentioned on the show, you can stream it if you're not just going to buy it because I say that you should. That's fine too. But I think even if you stream it, there's still... Me and Steve were talking about the differences between the director's cut and the theatrical cut. I still think that you are going to want to see more after. If you stream it first, you're going to be like, all right, I got to see the fucking director's cut. I got to know what they're talking about. And I promise you, it is inevitable that you will think the director's cut is much better and just a goddamn good action film. So, fucking hate Zoom because now I got to do all this weird shit. Come on now. Ellis Cinema, Steve Wang. Oh, I was so nervous. So nervous. He's responsible for like all the shit that I like in my job. Ellis Cinema, Steve Wang, director of Drive, special effects guy. Make sure you give Drive the MVD release, MVD rewind release. You're not disappointed. Love what those guys are doing out there. We're getting into some Arrow video status with that shit. Ellis Cinema, we gone.
Recordings.